I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head. I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
I know that most of you have likely heard about 3-year-old Dennis Jurgens, or at least seen his autopsy photos, but have you heard the complete story of Dennis? Although his death occurred in 1965, not many people go into details when discussing his murder. After he was murdered, no one would start an investigation until his biological mother came forward 20 years later, wondering what happened to the little boy that she had been forced to give away. And what she learned would forever devastate and break her heart. This is a true crime case of 3-year-old Dennis Jurgens. Welcome to the Murder She Shed, the place we honor the dead, right from my she shed. My name is Holly, and if you'd like to join me for lesser known true crime, then make sure you hit that subscribe. Thanks to one of my subscribers, Kitty Cat, for recommending this case to me. I know many of you have had requests, and in between the cases I discover, I am trying to get to your case suggestions too, especially if it is a lesser known crime case. Before I forget, make sure you go follow me on TikTok under my channel name Murder She Shed. Also, I just started a Facebook page, Murder She Shed, and you could be my first follower. I will be putting a little more personable type stuff and pictures on that account. So please support me on those links. So hopefully more people can find me here on YouTube. I will try to find the links and put them down below in a comment. If you would support me like that, I would really appreciate it because you guys are amazing. The most amazing subscribers anyone can ever have. But you guys think I'm tech savvy. I am not at all. It's been quite a journey though for me. That knew nothing when I first started this, but 9-10 months later, here I am still doing it. Not having a clue what the actual crap I'm doing, but here I am. Before we start, this case does involve child abuse and graphic images, so if this is a trigger to you, then go check out a different video on my channel, Murder She Shed. That being said, let's get started. This case was emotional for me because as I deeply scanned the picture of this little boy just before he was murdered, I realized how much he looked like my youngest son at that age. That same blonde hair and eyes that look so much like my son's eyes. It is uncanny. Not to mention that mischievous smile. It is heartbreaking to hear how this little boy didn't receive the same love that my son did. It is truly a sad case. Look at that picture. A beautiful little boy whose life was taken way, way, way too soon. Please stay with me and let's honor his memory as we listen to this case. In September of 1986, a woman named SHERWOOD showed up at the White Bear Lake Police Department concerned about her son's possible homicide in 1965. White Bear Lake is a city in Ramsey County, Minnesota. The city is located on White Bear Lake, one of the largest lakes in the Minneapolis area. Jerry had a story to tell authorities. Jerry told them about how when she turned 17, she ended up pregnant with the little boy she had named Dennis. But at the time, she had gotten in trouble and had ended up at a girls' reform school, and while there, had been forced to give up her baby. Dennis went immediately into foster care. After Jerry had gotten out of the reform school, she went on to marry Dennis's father, and they had 4 more children together. Jerry married a second time, but it ended in a divorce, so although tough, she continued to raise her 4 children alone. Jerry never forgot her firstborn, and one day, with the encouragement of her now-grown children, decided to call the Ramsey County Child Welfare Office to find out where Dennis was now. But they told her she had surrendered all legal rights and was not entitled to further information. It was in a newspaper article that she read later that year that she learned a woman named Lois Jurgens was Dennis's adopted mother. This is when she decided to contact Lois, but she did not mention to Lois about how she had read in the newspaper that he had numerous bruises and injuries on his body. Lois told her that Dennis had slipped on a wet basement floor and injured himself, causing peritonitis, and they had passed away in 1965. Jerry was upset to hear her firstborn had passed away, so she asked Lois for a picture of Dennis, and Lois had promised to send her Dennis' baptism sweater and a picture, but Jerry never heard from her again. When Jerry tried to call her again, the telephone number was no longer listed. You know, this is when you be thinking something's fishy about this whole situation. Jerry's woman intuition kicked in, and she said that she had a deep feeling her son had been beat to death. This is when Jerry had decided to go to the Ramsey County Police Department and ask to see the police report about this supposed fall. The officer read the report aloud to Jerry and her son that had come with her, whom she had also named Dennis. The report read Dennis was laying on his back in the crib with his head facing west and his feet pointing east. His arms were towards the east or alongside of his body with his hands about 8 inches off the bed. There were covers partly on Dennis. They were up to about the middle of the body. Dennis had many black and blue spots or bruises on his face, head, and arms. The rest of his body was covered up with a blanket. On his face and forehead, there was at least a dozen black and blue places. Some were very large and others small. His nose was almost blood red and peeling. After this, Jerry went to the ME's office where she met Dr. McGee and told him she was investigating Dennis' death in 1965. After Dr. McGee looked at the autopsy report, he was shocked that it hadn't been wrote up as a homicide. There were 50 to 100 bruises running the full length of Dennis's little body. It was hard to judge the exact amount because so many had overlapped. Some bruises looked to be fresh, while some appeared older. A large abrasion was seen on the forehead. On his private area at the base was a large ulcer area, and on the tip were dark bruises that looked like a bite mark had caused the bruising. Y'all probably seen the autopsy pictures before, but I'm showing them to you right now. I wish I could show the private area, but I cannot. YouTube rules and all. You need to go look at his private area. It's almost like there's just a big hole there. It says an ulcered area, and I can't believe there was also bite marks. Although normally young children have some amount of fat on their bodies, this young boy's body had no subcutaneous fat. An internal autopsy had also been done, and his cause of death had been listed as peritonitis from a laceration of his small bowel. Finally, a new investigation would be started for the case of Dennis Jurgens. The ME, Dr. McGee, was going to dig Dennis up almost 22 years later and do another autopsy. No one was sure if there would be enough of the body left to even do one, though. His grave was exhumed and brought back to the basement autopsy room in order to open the casket. Dr. McGee lifted up the first cover and noticed Dennis' name and dates of birth and death on the tag. Then he began to open the casket itself, and after 22 years, Dennis's body was remarkably preserved. Dennis's body had mummified like an ancient man preserved in time. Dennis's bruises were still visible on his now leathery brown skin. His entrails were even in remarkable condition, and he was able to verify the hole in the small bowel that had caused fecal matter to be released into his abdomen, causing an infection. It was as if Dennis' body was crying out from the ground, wanting revenge for what he had done to him. McGee would later recall how he had thought about the story of Cain and Abel from the Bible, when Cain had murdered his brother Abel. God asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" And Cain answered, "I am not my brother's keeper." God replied, "Abel's blood cries out from the ground." Dennis was finally getting his retribution. Officers noticed that some of the files were actually missing from the case in 1965. They had tried to bring charges against Lois then, but their attempts had failed. Although Lois was not charged in 1965, they did take her oldest adopted son, Robert, away from her due to the suspicious nature of Dennis' death. After a lengthy process of Robert being rehomed with various relatives, including a suspicious house fire which killed his grandmother and rumored to have been caused by Lois, Robert was then placed back with Lois and Harold, and the couple were even allowed to adopt 4 more siblings after that, even though they knew before she had adopted any of the children she had been originally deemed unfit to adopt due to her struggles with depression and psychosis. During the 1987 trial, Lois' brother, who had been an officer in Ramsey County during the trial in 1965, had been accused of destroying files in order to protect his sister. They even had a witness that testified that Lois's brother had told him that he would do everything in his power to keep his sister clear. Dennis' story was finally being told after 22 years after his death. It began when Dennis was adopted by the Jurgens at 1 year of age. They had already adopted their oldest son, Robert, who had been a quiet and obedient child, while Dennis had been the opposite. He was an outgoing and just energetic child. Lois did not like Dennis from the start because he was more stubborn than Robert and had loads of energy. In her effort to make Dennis right in her eyes, Lois embarked on a series of sadistic and corporal punishments. Angered at Dennis for rejecting certain foods, she responded by placing horseradish on the food and then force-fed it to him. According to reports from family members who eventually testified at the murder trial, Dennis turned purple from being force-fed the bitter and spicy horseradish, and also having his oxygen supply cut off when Lois actually covered his mouth and nose. This treatment, along with the exertion as he struggled, sickened Dennis to the point of vomiting, which further enraged her. She then forced him to eat his own vomit. People watched this, guys, and they did not report this. This is stuff they watched back 20 years before and never mentioned it to anybody. This is back before child abuse was discussed that much. You know, people just didn't discuss that. Even when I was little, it really was not discussed, which is sad. It was just hidden. Lois obsessed about Dennis' weight, which, according to medical records, was appropriate for a child of his age and build at the point of his adoption. He was frequently starved to rid him of sloppy fat, as Lois called it. She even called him sloppy fat. That was his nickname. 3 years old. We're talking about from 1 to 3 years old. This is how this child was treated. Due to this frequent starvation, Dennis gained only 3 pounds in the 2.5-year period as he aged from 1 to 3. Lois' remedy for Dennis wetting his diaper too frequently was to place a spring-action clothespin upon the end of his little private. Clothespin on his little wee-wee, y'all. What's wrong with people? They're sick. Only 9 months after she had adopted Dennis, he was brought into the emergency room with his privates burnt. Lois would say Dennis had turned on the hot water when she had been giving him a bath in the sink. The burn had been so bad that he had needed a skin graft. Little Dennis had been crying in pain with his legs spread apart because of the pain when he put his legs together. But even then, nothing was done to help Dennis. Lois would yank both of her boys by the ears. Robert, the oldest son, would testify to seeing Lois dunking Dennis in a wash tub in the basement that was there so they could wash their clothes in. She grabbed him by the ears and submerged his head several times in the water. Each time, Dennis would gasp for air. Only his brother said he cried the first time he came up because he realized that he couldn't cry and breathe, so he quit crying just so he could breathe. Oh, Lord Jesus, I'd like to dunk that woman's head under. Testimony from neighbors and family members told of young Dennis showing up to public events wearing sunglasses at the age of 2 to hide his frequent black eyes. In addition, Lois took to tying Dennis's limbs to the bedpost to keep him in bed and tied him to a toilet to force a bowel movement. The coroner noted there was evidence of adult human bite marks on his little wee-wee. Lois considered herself a devout Catholic and believed she was doing God's work by making Dennis perfect in her eyes. To this end, she forced religious training on her young sons. It is said that young Robert flawlessly recited the rosary at 2. Dennis struggled with such training and was forced to pray and recite his rosary, kneeling on a broomstick for extended periods until he did it correctly. The night of his death, a great flood had hit the St. Paul area, and the Mississippi River waters were at record levels, causing flooding in the region and inside the Jurgens home. Lois, who abused Dennis constantly, escalated to new levels of rage as the floodwaters filled her basement. The only witness to Lois's final abuse of Dennis was Robert, who was 5 years old at the time. He had been riding his bike in the basement when Lois had beat and threw the little 3-year-old Dennis down the stairs. He said Lois ran down the stairs and started shaking and hitting the now crying and terrified Dennis. After they all went to bed that night, Robert was awakened by screams coming from Dennis's room. When Robert looked into the room, he seen Lois shaking Dennis, who he stated looked limp. The 4 siblings that had been adopted by the Jurgens after Dennis' death testified about how Lois had abused them too. Beatings and displays of Lois' explosive temper were daily events, especially bad days, which include her slamming a child's forehead into a nail protruding from a wall, forcing a child to stand barefoot in the snow, and shoving what you use for your monthly thing. She shoved a used one of those in one of the children's face. That's just disgusting. This woman was sick. Lois Jurgens was sentenced to 25 years in the Shakopee, I'm not sure if that's how you say it, woman's facility for third-degree murder. She was 61 when she went to prison and served only 8 years. 8 years, guys, before being paroled. After murdering one child and abusing 5 other children, she only served 8 years and ended up with third-degree murder. Third degree because they could never prove, I guess, that she did that on purpose. Harold Jurgens, who visited his wife regularly at the prison, died in 2000. Lois Jurgens died May 7, 2013. And I looked Jerry Sherwood up and could not find any additional information on her. Not sure why, but I looked everything I could and nothing recent was found on her. Not sure if she's alive still or not. If y'all know, give me a holler on it. Or if Jerry happens to be watching, tell us how you're doing. All right. Well, guys, thanks for listening to Dennis's story. His memory deserves to live on. As usual, I will leave you with a few of me and Simon's bloopers. In fact, I think I might take Simon for a little run and take y'all right through my land here on the four-wheeler. Anyway, love y'all. Bye. I feel like I could drink like 5 Dr. Peppers. Maybe I should get one out of my fridge. Yes, I have a little mini fridge in my she shed just for my baby Dr. Peppers. Keeps them just so cold. They're almost got... Oh, shit. Yeah, that was fun. I can't keep up with it. Somebody do something. You know why I was doing that? Because it kind of almost froze. Now I got wet pants. Good thing I got paper towels for just this occasion. It's not the first time this crap happened to me. You're going to see me paint if you think I can't open a Dr. Pepper. Painting gets really wild. Yeah, that's very icy. I can't even get any more out right now. Me and my husband go out to this old man's house. He's a farmer. He owns all this land. He owns a lot more land than we do. And he has horses and donkeys and jackasses and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm not counting my husband in that order. Don't think I'm calling my husband a jackass or anything. I wasn't counting him, although he can be sometimes. But anyway, that's a whole different subject. Well, we go out there quite a bit. We go out there and we visit the horses and pet the horses. We just enjoy it out there. But I was thinking while I was out there, because I've been out there at night before, and it is freaking scary because it's an old pig farm. You know, used to hold pigs in it. He no longer has pigs, and it's been abandoned, and it's starting to fall apart, and you hear the metal chinking around because the roof's coming off, and it is super scary late in the evening like that. And I think I'm going to go out there one evening, a case out there, because I think it'd be super, super spooky. I may chicken out. Maybe nobody will murder me on the pig farm. White Bear Lake is in Ramsey County, Minnesota. I don't think that's how they stalk. I think stalk. Do you guys stalk in Minnesota? I think that's South Dakota. I think I'm a little bit confused. Do you guys have that accent too? Probably not. Making you crap up as usual. One of the largest lakes in the Minneapolis. Oh my gosh. Sherwood showed up at the White Bear Lake Police Department. There's a clock I have in here. How long does this thing last? Remember? I have to go turn it off, I guess. Time goes on. Time goes on. Are you done? Great. Now we can try the skin. And Harold. Why can't I say that? Robert was then placed back with Lois and Harold. God dang it. The floods filled the basement. Oh my God. Simon, you scared the piss out of me. Good old boy, though. Love you, good old boy. Can I finish my thing? No. You're joking me. You listen to the story. I know. In the Mississippi River's water.
And it haunts me somewhere much deeper. Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all their shoulders, like moving boulders just to get out of the home. It sucks, I've had enough, I don't wanna feel the stuck under the rug, all my problems that I shove. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I've been feeling weird, I can't seem to focus good enough. Nothing's really clear, sometimes it could be a little tough. I just need to feel like the end's in sight for me, but let's